I can hear how passionate you are, Congressman. And you said this now. You've also said this on the House floor over a year ago that Social Security is not an entitlement, it's an earned benefit. So what do you think's missing then from the national dialogue when it comes to Social Security? Because you said that's a story that hasn't been told yet when it comes to the age. So what's missing here?
I think what's missing here is the willingness to vote. And currently, the situation, whether the House or the Senate, but I'm more familiar with the House, is that they won't even bring it up in the committee for a vote. And so I don't understand the fear because many Republicans have said to me privately and candidly that they would vote for this bill, et cetera, but their leadership and their contributors have a problem with it. And this is another thing I don't understand. For every business that pays part of the Social Security, meaning the employer pays part and the employee pays part, but the employer gets a tax write-off for that part. So it's not costing the employer anything. And what it's doing is help shrink, as you pointed out earlier, the vast wealth gap that exists. Imagine 5 million Americans, most of them, by the way, Brittany, women, get below poverty level checks from the government, having worked and paid into the system. Why? Because they were the care providers, because they were home with their children or a sick person in their family. And while they were working, as you also know, they were making far less than their male counterparts. Now, fast forward to today, 10,000 baby boomers a day become eligible for Social Security. That's why I think that, especially as those baby boomers are having their kitchen table discussions and talking with their accountants, attorneys, or just family members saying, hey, what's the deal with this Social Security? Yeah, we paid into this. Why hasn't there been an adjustment or a change that would reflect the needs that exist today? And that's
To
what
your
we hope to do with Security 2100.
And to your point, I mean, Social Security really should transcend party lines. It affects Republican Americans, Democrat Americans. I am curious, what are those private conversations with your colleagues looking like, especially those ones across the aisle?
Well, my favorite conversation was with Mark Meadows. You may recall Mark, who went on to be Trump's chief of staff, but he was one of the original founders of the Freedom Caucus. And he said very candidly, he said, listen, you know, these issues, especially as it relates to Social Security, he said, I understand what that means in rural North Carolina. That's a lifeline for all of our people. And that is so true. For over 40% of all Americans on Social Security, it's the only benefit they have. So one of the things I've been doing, and you might appreciate this, I don't know if you can see this card at all, but what I do is I make a card for every single member of Congress, House and Senate, and on it, it has their district, how many Social Security recipients they have, and then breaks it down to the Social Security recipients for pension, the spousal contribution, the dependent contribution, and the disability contribution. For example, more veterans rely on Social Security disability than they do on the VA. And then, most importantly, we also add how much money comes into your local congressional district on a monthly basis. There's no better economic development plan. There's no greater way to close this gap when we have both a global pandemic and global inflation than to make sure that the very people in your district that need it the most are going to be able to get an increase to help them survive. And where do they spend that money? Right back in the communities they live in. They spend it at the local grocery store, at the pharmacy, where they pump gas, they pay their rent or mortgages. The money comes back locally. Nobody's going to get wealthy on Social Security payments. On average, a Social Security payment for a male is $18,000. For a female is $14,000. And as we indicated earlier, for 5 million are getting below $12,000 for their Social Security payment to live on for a year. Uh, Things have changed a lot since 1971, but what needs to change most of all is for the American people to be outraged and say, hey, Congress, how about a vote? If you got a better idea than Social Security 2100, by all means, put it on the floor. But to say that we need to study this, the American people, American economists, everybody understands Social Security. There's nothing to study about it. Either you are going to cut benefits or increase revenues so that you can enhance the program. There's a lot that we could do with efficiencies, et cetera. But so far, the other side has said what they intend to do is cut Social Security by 21% across the board.